My daughter. In-law's message arrived at 9:40. 7 on a Monday night. Do not come tomorrow. You are causing too much trouble. We need space. I read it again and again while holding the birthday card I had bought for my 4-year-old grandson. The next afternoon, I drove 3 hours anyway. I sat outside their apartment with a wrapped wooden train on the passenger seat, wondering whether I should leave. Then a stranger called my phone and said, "Mr. Mitchell, you need to come inside right now." What I found behind that apartment door nearly took my son's life. But the reason my daughter-in-law wanted me gone was even worse. My name is Robert Mitchell, although everyone has called me Bob for as long as I can remember. I was 67 years old when this happened. I had spent nearly 4 decades working as an electrical contractor in Springfield, Missouri. I believed that if I kept my word, worked hard, and always showed up for my family, love would take care of everything else. I was wrong about that last part. Before I continue, I would truly love to know where you are listening from today. What city or country are you in? Please tell me in the comments below. It means a lot to know how far my story has traveled and who is sharing this moment with me. Now, let me take you back to the beginning. Because the message that night was not the first warning. It was only the first warning I could no longer ignore. My wife, Margaret, had passed away 2 years earlier. We had been married for 38 years. Cancer took her only 5 months after the doctors discovered it. One day we were discussing a trip we wanted to take after retirement. A few months later, I was sitting beside a hospice bed, listening to the soft sound of a fan, because Margaret had always liked white noise when she slept. Losing her changed the shape of my life. The house felt too large. Dinner became something I ate in front of the television. I retired from daily electrical work, although I still helped old customers when they called. I had money saved, a paid-off home, and plenty of time. But time is not always a gift when the person you plan to spend it with is gone. My only son, Ethan, became the center of what remained of my family. He was 34, thoughtful, quiet, and always eager to keep the peace. When he was young, I considered that one of his best qualities. Later, I learned that a peaceful nature can become dangerous when someone uses it against you. Ethan worked as a claims adjuster for an insurance company. 6 years before this story began, the company transferred him to Tulsa, Oklahoma. The promotion came with a better title and a modest raise. It also placed him 3 hours away from me. About a year after the move, he married a woman named Vanessa Parker. Vanessa was charming when I met her. She remembered people's birthdays. She gave polished compliments. She could walk into a quiet room and make everyone feel as if a celebration had started. At the wedding, she hugged me and promised that I would always be part of their family. Margaret met Vanessa only a few times before she became ill. After one dinner, Margaret told me she knows how to make people like her, but I am not sure she knows how to love them. I told my wife she was judging too quickly. Margaret only smiled and said, "I hope you are right. I wish I had been." 4 years before that terrible Tuesday, Ethan and Vanessa had a son named Noah. I drove to Tulsa for his birth and waited at the hospital for 11 hours. I drank terrible coffee from a vending machine and walked the same hallway until the nurses began greeting me by name. When they finally placed Noah in my arms, he was small, red-faced, and angry at the world. He wrapped his tiny hand around one of my fingers. Something inside me, something that had gone quiet during Margaret's illness, came alive again. From then on, I drove to Tulsa almost every month. I took Interstate 44 and listened to old radio programs whenever I could find a clear signal. I brought diapers, paper towels, coffee, laundry detergent, and the ordinary supplies young parents always seemed to need. I also brought Noah one small gift each time. Nothing expensive, a wooden truck, a picture book, a set of stacking cups. Vanessa used to call those visits Grandpa's Care Package Days. She posted photographs online with smiling faces and little red hearts. Ethan always walked me to my truck before I left. "Thanks for coming, Dad," he would say. "It means more than you know." For a while, everything appeared normal. Then, about 18 months before the message, the pattern began to change. Ethan and I had always spoken on Sunday evenings. Suddenly, he stopped answering. He would send a message an hour later saying he was busy and would call soon. But soon became Monday, and Monday became another week. I told myself he was working hard and raising a toddler. I remembered how busy I had been at his age. I did not want to become the lonely father who demanded attention every day. Then Vanessa began canceling my visits. Sometimes she said Noah had a cold. Sometimes she claimed they had plans with her relatives. Once she said the apartment was too messy for visitors. Each excuse sounded reasonable by itself. Together they formed a wall. I did not recognize it as a wall at first, because it had been built one small brick at a time. My older sister, Susan, noticed before I did. She was 71 and had no patience for excuses. One morning, we met for coffee at a restaurant in Springfield. I told her that I had seen Noah only twice in 6 months. Susan put down her cup and looked straight at me. "Bob, this is not about a dirty apartment," she said. "Someone is deciding how much access you have to your own son and grandson. That is control." I told her she was being dramatic. She answered, "Then promise me you will pay attention." I promised, but I still did not push Ethan. I was afraid that asking hard questions would drive him farther away. That fear kept me quiet when I should have spoken. 2 weeks before Noah's 4th birthday, Ethan finally called me. He sounded tired, but he said the family was planning a party on Saturday. I asked if I could visit on Tuesday before the party, so Noah and I could have a quiet afternoon together. "Sure, Dad," Ethan said. "Come around too. We can grill dinner." It was the most normal conversation we had shared in months. I bought Noah a wooden train set from a small shop in Springfield. It cost $42 and did not need batteries. I wrapped it myself in blue paper. The corners looked terrible, but Margaret had always said badly wrapped presents were a family tradition. On Monday night, my bag was packed and the gift was waiting beside the front door. Then Vanessa's message arrived. "Do not come tomorrow. You are causing too much trouble. We need space." There was no explanation. She did not say Noah was sick. She did not say the party had changed. She simply called me trouble and told me to stay away. I called Ethan. The call went directly to voicemail. I called again 20 minutes later. The same thing happened. I hardly slept. I walked through my quiet house, sat down, stood up, and read the message until every word seemed wrong. By sunrise, I had decided to drive to Tulsa. I told myself I would not create a scene. If everything looked normal, I would leave the train at the door and go home. But I needed to see the building with my own eyes. I needed to know that Ethan and Noah were safe. I left Springfield at 11 that morning. The drive usually felt familiar, but that day every mile seemed slow. I stopped once for gas and a Diet Coke. I called Ethan again from the gas station. No answer. I reached the Copper Ridge Apartments at about 2:20 in the afternoon. The temperature outside was 96 degrees. I parked in a visitor space facing the second-floor unit where Ethan lived. No one came out. The curtains were closed. At 2:24, another message came from Vanessa. "Ethan is not feeling well. Please leave. I will contact you about the party." That message made my concern stronger. If my diabetic son was unwell, why was his wife telling his father to drive 3 hours home? Why had Ethan not contacted me himself? I could have walked upstairs and knocked. I could have called the police. Instead, I sat in my truck and argued with myself. Part of me said I should respect their privacy. Another part reminded me of Susan's warning. I stared at the wrapped train beside me and felt foolish, unwanted, and worried all at once. I stayed there for 40 minutes. At 3:06, my phone rang from a number I did not recognize. A man said, "Mr. Mitchell, my name is Mark Reynolds. I manage the Copper Ridge property. I found your number on the guarantor form for apartment 214. You need to come inside right now." My chest went cold. I asked if Ethan was all right. There was a pause before Mark answered. "Sir, please come upstairs. I will meet you at the door." I left the train in my unlocked truck and ran toward the building. I do not remember crossing the parking lot. I only remember my legs moving faster than they had in years. On the second-floor walkway, an older woman stood outside apartment 216. She had silver hair pulled back from her face and both hands pressed together in front of her. The moment she saw me, she said, "You must be Ethan's father." "Thank God. I have been trying to get someone here for 3 days. 3 days. I asked her what she meant, but before she could answer, Mark approached with a master key. He explained that the woman was Helen Carter, Ethan's neighbor. Helen had reported that she had not seen Ethan leave for work. His mail was collecting. She had not heard Noah playing. The apartment had remained dark. Mark had knocked on the door more than once. He had also tried to call the emergency number listed on the lease. That number was supposed to be mine, but every call had gone to a different Tulsa number that disconnected after 2 rings. At the time, I could not understand how my number had been changed. Later, it became one of the most important pieces of evidence. Because I was still listed as the guarantor, I gave Mark permission to enter. He opened the door. The apartment was dark, hot, and silent. The blinds were closed in the middle of the afternoon. The air smelled stale, and bags of trash sat near the kitchen. I called Ethan's name. No answer. I called Noah's name. The silence after that was worse. I moved through the living room and saw a suitcase near the front door. It was open. Noah's clothes were inside, along with several items I recognized as Ethan's diabetic supplies. Then I heard a faint sound from the bathroom. I found my son lying on the floor beside the bathtub. His shirt was soaked with sweat. His skin looked pale, and his eyes could barely focus. An empty insulin pen rested on the tile near his hand. Ethan had been diagnosed with type 1 diabetes when he was 19. He had managed it carefully for 15 years. He always carried glucose tablets and backup supplies. But those supplies had been placed inside the suitcase by the door, out of his reach when he became too weak to stand. I knelt beside him and called his name. He moved his lips, but I could not understand the words. For one terrible second, he looked like a child again. I remembered carrying him on my shoulders at the state fair. I remembered teaching him to ride a bicycle. I remembered promising Margaret that I would always look after him. My hand shook so badly that I nearly dropped my phone while calling emergency services. Mark called as well. Helen brought a wet towel and orange juice. We did not force Ethan to drink because he was barely conscious, but the emergency operator guided us until the paramedics arrived. They moved quickly. They checked his blood sugar, started treatment, and placed him on a stretcher. One of the paramedics, a woman named Melissa Grant, pulled me aside after Ethan became more responsive. "Your son's blood sugar was critically low," she said. "He is severely dehydrated. If another 12 hours had passed, this could have ended very differently." Another 12 hours. Those words still wake me sometimes. Then I realized something else. Noah was not in the apartment. I searched every room, although I already knew he was gone. His bed was empty. Several of his favorite clothes were missing. His small red backpack was gone too. I asked Mark whether he had seen Vanessa or Noah. He said Vanessa's car had been gone for several days. Helen then told us that she had seen Vanessa loading boxes, suitcases, a stroller, and Noah's car seat into a rented sport utility vehicle over the weekend. Through the thin apartment wall, Helen had heard Ethan asking where Vanessa planned to take their son. She had heard an argument. Then everything became quiet. I rode in the ambulance with Ethan, holding his hand while the paramedics worked. I did not know where my grandson was. I did not know whether Vanessa had left Oklahoma. I did not know whether Ethan's medical emergency had been an accident, or whether someone had knowingly abandoned him. I had run a business, buried my wife, and spent most of my life remaining calm during emergencies. That afternoon, calm left me completely. It felt as if the floor of the world had opened beneath my feet. Ethan was admitted to the same Tulsa hospital where Noah had been born. By 7 that evening, his condition had stabilized. A doctor named Andrew Collins told me that the immediate danger had passed, but Ethan needed fluids monitoring and rest. I sat beside his bed and watched him sleep. Around 9, his eyes opened. He looked at me as if he was trying to remember where he was. Then he whispered, "Dad, she took Noah." Those 4 words told me that the canceled visits, missed calls, and closed curtains were connected. I asked where Vanessa had gone. Ethan shook his head. He said he had tried to stop her from leaving. During the argument, his glucose levels became unstable. He told Vanessa he needed his medical kit. She said it was already packed. He became dizzy and fell in the bathroom. Ethan remembered calling for help. He remembered hearing Vanessa moving through the apartment. He remembered the front door closing. After that, he remembered nothing. I wanted to find Vanessa that night. I wanted answers immediately. Instead, shortly after midnight, I called my oldest friend, Thomas Harris. Everyone called him Tom. He had worked as a police detective in Springfield for almost 30 years. He had been retired for 11 years, but he still knew how to separate anger from evidence. I told him everything. I told him about Vanessa's messages, Ethan on the bathroom floor, the changed emergency number, the packed suitcase, and my missing grandson. Tom remained silent for a moment. Then he said, "Bob, this did not begin 3 days ago. You said Vanessa started limiting your visits 18 months ago. That is where we begin. Do not confront her. Do not post anything online. Do not warn her family. Protect Ethan, contact an attorney, and let us collect facts." Every part of me wanted to reject that advice, but years of running a business had taught me that anger makes noise while evidence makes decisions. I agreed to wait. The next morning, while Ethan rested, Tom spoke with Mark and Helen. I contacted an experienced family attorney in Tulsa named Laura Bennett. Laura told me to document everything, preserve every message, and allow the police and the court to handle Noah's return. That was difficult advice, but it was correct. Helen became one of the most important witnesses in the case. She was 68, a retired school cafeteria worker, and had lived next door for 11 years. She had watched Noah grow from a baby in a car seat into a little boy who waved at her every morning. Over the previous 6 months, Helen had noticed serious changes. She heard arguments late at night. She saw Vanessa leave for long periods with Noah. Sometimes Vanessa stayed away overnight. Ethan became thinner and quieter. His curtains remained closed during the day, and he stopped sitting outside with Noah. Helen had tried to call me 3 times during those months. Each attempt reached a number that was not mine. That detail proved the isolation had not happened by accident. Someone had changed the emergency contact number on the apartment records. Someone had blocked my number on Ethan's phone during certain hours. Someone had also created message filters that moved emails from my address into a hidden folder. Ethan had not rejected me as often as I believed. Many of my calls and messages had never reached him. For 4 days, Tom helped us follow the information Ethan was legally allowed to access. Laura made sure every step stayed within the law. We reviewed joint bank statements, phone records on Ethan's family plan, old emails, lease records, and messages Vanessa had sent from a shared computer. The truth arrived piece by piece, and every piece made the picture worse. Vanessa had lost her marketing job 14 months earlier. She never told Ethan. Every weekday morning, she dressed for work and left the apartment. Instead of going to an office, she spent hours at coffee shops and shopping centers. She had rented a post office box in another town so official letters would not arrive at home. Ethan had been giving her half of every paycheck for rent, groceries, childcare, and other household bills. But more than $31,000 had disappeared over 14 months. Some of it paid secret credit cards. Some paid for hotel rooms and repeated weekend trips to Dallas. Vanessa had told Ethan those were work trips with colleagues. The colleagues did not exist anymore because she no longer had the job. Phone records connected those Dallas visits to a man named Jason Brooks. Vanessa had known Jason before she met Ethan. Their private relationship had started again months before she began cutting me out of the family. The packed suitcase by the apartment door gave us the next part of the plan. Noah's clothes and Ethan's medical supplies had been mixed together. At first, I thought Vanessa had packed carelessly. Laura believed it showed something more troubling. Vanessa wanted Ethan unable to follow her or react quickly while she took Noah away. Then Tom found the travel records. Vanessa had reserved a one-way moving trailer to Plano, Texas. She had applied for a 2-bedroom apartment 11 minutes from Jason's home. The move was planned for the week of Noah's birthday. She intended to take my grandson across state lines before Ethan could ask the court for help. The most painful evidence was an email Vanessa had sent to her sister 9 days before my canceled visit. It said, "Once I am in Texas, everything will be cleaner. Ethan will fight for a while, but he will get tired. His father is the real problem. Bob pays attention. I need him away until we are already gone." I read that last sentence several times. I need him away. Her message calling me too much trouble had never been about family space. It had been designed to keep the one person asking questions 3 hours away while she finished her plan. Even after seeing the bank statements and travel records, a small part of me wanted to believe there was another explanation. It is difficult to accept that someone you welcomed into your family can watch your child suffer and decide that leaving is more convenient than calling for help. That final email ended my denial. 8 days after I found him, Ethan was well enough to return with me to Springfield for a short recovery. He sat at my kitchen table in the house where he had grown up. The folder of evidence rested in front of him. He did not cry at first. He became completely still. Finally, he said, "She heard me calling from the bathroom. She kept packing. Then she left me there." I placed my hand on his shoulder. There was nothing I could say to make that truth smaller. Ethan then admitted that he had known something was wrong for months. Vanessa controlled the household money. She criticized him whenever he asked questions. She said I was interfering. When he tried to call me, she accused him of choosing his father over his wife. He kept telling himself these were ordinary marriage problems. He thought patience would repair them. He did not want to admit that his family was falling apart. Vanessa had counted on his silence. By then, Laura had filed for an emergency custody order. The application included Ethan's medical records, Helen's sworn statement, the travel reservation, the lease application in Texas, the messages, and the evidence that Vanessa had hidden Noah from his father. For several days, we still did not know exactly where Noah was. I cannot describe that waiting without feeling the same pressure in my chest. Every car outside made me look toward the window. Every phone call made my hands cold. Then Laura received confirmation. Noah was at Vanessa's sister's home in Broken Arrow, Oklahoma. He was safe, fed, and physically unharmed. Vanessa had left him there while she prepared the move to Texas. Knowing he was safe brought relief, but it did not solve the legal problem. Vanessa's sister refused to release him to us without a court order. Laura told us not to create a confrontation. We waited for the judge. Within 72 hours, The court granted Ethan temporary sole physical custody. The judge considered the medical emergency, the possible interstate move, and Helen's testimony serious enough to act immediately. I drove to Broken Arrow with a member of Laura's legal team and the signed order. The wooden train was still in my truck, wrapped in the same blue paper. I had carried it between Tulsa, the hospital, and Springfield because I could not bring myself to leave it behind. When the front door opened, Noah stood in the hallway. His hair was messy. One front tooth was missing from a fall earlier that summer. He looked smaller than I remembered. For a second, he stared at me. Then he shouted, "Grandpa!" I knelt on the porch, wrapped both arms around him and cried. I had not cried in public since Margaret's funeral, but I did not care who saw me. Noah leaned against my shoulder and asked the most ordinary question in the world. "Did you bring my train?" I laughed through my tears and told him it was in the truck. We opened it together in the driveway. For a few minutes, the court order, the hospital, and Vanessa's plan disappeared. There was only a little boy pushing a wooden engine across its track while his father watched from the car with tears in his eyes. The larger custody hearing took place several weeks later. Laura presented the bank statements, hidden credit cards, false employment story, trips to Dallas, moving reservation, Texas lease application, changed contact information, and Vanessa's own email. Helen testified about hearing Ethan call for help. Mark explained the welfare check and the false emergency number. Ethan's doctors described how close he had come to losing his life. Vanessa's attorney argued that she had panicked. He said she had believed Ethan would recover on his own, but the timeline did not support that claim. She had continued loading the vehicle, taken Noah away, and failed to contact emergency services. The judge granted Ethan primary custody. Vanessa received supervised visits, dependent on counseling, a psychological evaluation, and compliance with the court's rules. She moved to Plano with Jason several weeks later. Her relationship with Noah became limited and carefully monitored. I felt no joy when the judge announced the decision. A courtroom cannot return the family you thought you had. It can only protect the family that remains. But I did feel relief. Noah would be with his father. Ethan would have time to recover, and Vanessa could no longer use secrecy to control them. There was one more person whose part in this story could not be forgotten. Helen Carter had saved my son's life. She noticed that his light did not turn on. She noticed the mail. She listened when the apartment became too quiet. She tried to contact me 3 times. Finally, she went to the property office and refused to leave until Mark agreed to investigate again. Weeks later, I sat at Helen's kitchen table and asked why she had worked so hard for a neighbor she did not know well. She looked surprised by the question. "Because that is what people are supposed to do," she said. "You do not wait for saving someone to become another person's job." I learned that Helen had 9 payments remaining on her car. The balance was $1,160. I contacted the credit union and paid it in full. When she called me, she was crying and asking why I had done it. I told her, "You gave my son a chance to live. The least I can give you is 1 less bill." I also created a small scholarship in Margaret's name at a community college in Tulsa. Helen's granddaughter was beginning nursing school there. The scholarship provided $2,500 each semester, as long as she remained enrolled. Money could never truly repay Helen, but gratitude should become an action whenever possible. Ethan moved back to Springfield that November. He did not move into my house because he wanted to rebuild his independence. I respected that. He rented a 2-bedroom home 8 minutes away. His company transferred him back to its Springfield office, and his manager welcomed him without hesitation. Noah started preschool nearby. Sunday dinner became a family habit again. Sometimes Susan joined us. Sometimes Helen drove up from Tulsa. The house that had felt empty after Margaret's death slowly became noisy again. Ethan began counseling. He learned that keeping the peace is not the same as being safe. He learned that asking for help does not mean failure. Most importantly, he learned to trust his own concern before someone else explained it away. One evening, several months after the hearing, Ethan and I sat on my back porch. I asked whether he regretted marrying Vanessa. He thought for a long time. "I cannot regret Noah," he said, "but I regret how long I ignored what was happening. Somewhere inside, I knew things were wrong. I kept calling it normal marriage stress because I did not want to be a man who gave up." I told him he had not been weak. Good people sometimes remain patient with situations that do not deserve their patience. They believe love can solve a problem created by someone who is using love as a weapon. Then I told him what I had learned. Love is not proven by how much pain you can quietly accept. Love is proven by who shows up when trouble arrives. It is proven by who stays beside the hospital bed, who notices the dark window, and who refuses to look away when something feels wrong. Noah turned 5 the following October. We held his party in my backyard. I hung warm string lights along the fence, just as Margaret used to do for birthdays. Ethan grilled hamburgers. Susan brought a large cake from Margaret's favorite bakery. Helen drove more than 3 hours from Tulsa to attend. When I told her she did not need to make such a long trip, she laughed. "I am not missing the party I helped make possible," she said. Noah ran through the yard wearing a paper birthday crown. He showed everyone that he could ride his bicycle with only one training wheel touching the ground. By 9 that night, he was covered in frosting and completely exhausted. He climbed onto the porch, swing beside me, rested his head against my chest, and fell asleep. I sat there after the yard became quiet. The porch light cast a soft yellow glow across the grass. My grandson breathed slowly in my arms. Ethan was inside washing dishes and laughing with Susan. Helen was packing cake for the drive home. I thought about the message Vanessa had sent. Too much trouble. Those words had been intended to make me feel ashamed for caring. They were supposed to turn me around, send me back to Springfield, and give her enough time to disappear. Her plan nearly worked. If I had left that parking lot 5 minutes earlier, Mark's call might not have reached me. If Helen had decided the silence next door was none of her business, Ethan might not have survived. If we had reacted with anger instead of gathering evidence, Vanessa might have crossed the state line with Noah before the court could stop her. But I stayed. Helen paid attention. Tom asked the right questions. Laura followed the facts, and Ethan found the strength to tell the truth. That is why my son is alive. That is why my grandson was asleep safely in my arms that night. People sometimes use words like difficult, interfering, or troublesome when they want caring people to become quiet. I no longer fear those words. If being too much trouble means driving 3 hours because your heart tells you something is wrong, then I am proud to be trouble. If being too much trouble means sitting beside your child until he is safe, then I will be trouble. If being too much trouble means protecting a little boy who cannot protect himself, then I hope I remain exactly that kind of trouble for every day I have left. Because sometimes trouble is simply love that refuses to turn away. Thank you very much for listening to my story all the way to the end. If it touched your heart or reminded you of someone who showed up when it mattered, please give this video a like and share your thoughts in the comments. I would also love to know where you are listening from. Subscribe to join us for more meaningful stories, and I look forward to seeing you in the next video.